I see on TikTok specifically people being like, well, I want to see someone else who has done it. I don't care if they have credentials. If this person lost 50 pounds postpartum and they healed their ab separation, I want to hear from them versus hear from this pelvic floor physical therapist who hasn't had a baby. I've seen that quite a bit, and it's like, you don't necessarily have to go through the process yourself to be knowledgeable and to have the expertise to help other people.
I've seen that too. And I think that that thought process is so interesting. Like someone trusting just, again, someone with lived experience who has done it over the actual expert professional.
Welcome to the Vibrantly You podcast. We're your hosts, Megan Martineau
And Caitlin Cipriano. In this podcast, we talk about fitness and nutrition on your motherhood journey. Whether you are trying to conceive, pregnant, postpartum, or beyond, you are welcome here.
Nothing is off limits, and our goal is to support you in this important season of life so that you can feel vibrantly you. As a reminder, this information is not medical advice. Please see the show notes for more details. Welcome back to the Vibrantly You podcast. Today we're doing a little bit of a different episode. Caitlin and I decided we need to do an episode on cutting through the crap on social media because we have seen quite a bit out there that's a little it just
Unhinged.
unhinged. Right before I hit record on this, we were just dying of laughter of some of the things that we've seen. So we're excited to just have this kind of be a like casual episode where we're just talking about things we've seen and also just to help you kind of decipher what you're seeing on social media and maybe how to fact check things and just like take a step back and be like, what am I looking at? Is this rooted in evidence? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Because I know too, like you and I have had just like text messages on things, and you're like, wait, is this a legit concern? Do I need to be worried about this? And I feel like if we as providers are having to question things that we even see from other people, then how does that make, the general person feel? I think it's very overwhelming and very confusing.
Yes, absolutely. So, just to like dive in with the first one that I have personally seen in the fitness world is just these general, like, do these three exercises for XYZ. One I see in the postpartum space a lot is like, do these three exercises to heal your diastasis recti. And that's just not how it works. Like, yes, these exercises are generally great. I often have my clients do them very early on in the postpartum recovery period. But if it were as simple as do these three exercises to heal your diastasis recti, we would all be healed. Like it's just not that simple. And I see this for like a lot of different things. Like do these three exercises to get, a what do people say? Like dump truck for like their butt, like a big butt. Like,
God, that's a thing.
oh yeah, I've seen that on TikTok. And I'm like, again, these are good exercises, but like if you're just doing like glute med kickbacks, like it's it's not that's not how it works. So that's like my biggest gripe, I think, in the fitness like online space is just they're very clickbaity things, right? They get a lot of attention. A lot of times some of these exercises too are like very elaborate or like it's a combination exercise. Like it looks really cool. It looks cool, grabs attention, people are saving it, but like it's not that simple. I wish it was, but it's not.
I think that is a piece with social media. Like you said, it's very clickbaity to grab attention, of course, but it lacks nuance and it doesn't tell you the real like consistency and effort and intention that goes into both fitness and nutrition, particularly in the perinatal space. There's going to be so much differentiation from person to person depending on what stage you're in, how your pregnancy went, how you're recovering, what is truly like needed for you. Do you have like me like lingering SI joint pain that's causing issues still like 2 years later? Do you have PCOS or insulin resistance? Like just like the different posts do not take like your specific considerations into account. And when you see certain things, go, oh, should I be doing this or this? Do I need this supplement, or do I need to be on like any specific type of like diet? It's just again like overwhelming and really lacks like nuance for each individual person.
Yeah, and heavy on the overwhelming piece. Like, because you will see so, like just 5 minutes scrolling your feed, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I need to implement all of these things. And then that feels like so much. And then I find that most people are just like, screw it. That's too much. I can't do it. So I'm just not gonna do anything at all, which we don't love either. And I definitely feel like from a nutrition standpoint with the supplements, like, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like all the supplements that people are taking these days, it's just like you have a whole like medicine cabinet full of all these different supplements and it's like, are these helping? Are these good? Why am I even taking this one? I don't even know, but this influencer told me to take it and she had a discount code. So,
I know. I have clients like that too. And most of them now will be like, they'll check before they make a purchase. But sometimes I've had people come in and they're like, tell me what their, laundry list of supplements are. And I'm like, so why did you incorporate that one? And it's the same kind of thing, like, oh, I just saw like this person taking it and it looks like I needed that too.
yeah. I mean, I even find that too. Like, I recently texted you about the colostrum. Like, what's going on? Like, when I think of colostrum, I'm thinking about like breastfeeding, right? Like, when
Yeah.
we were pregnant, they talk about like maybe harvesting some colostrum or right when you first have your baby. Like, you only have colostrum for like a couple days max, and then your milk transitions anyways. So I'm like, if babies only need colostrum for a couple days, why are adults taking colostrum every day? I'd love to know your take on that trend specifically.
I think that one's very interesting. I think that it is definitely come out of the like bodybuilding space in particular. And it obviously does contain like antibodies and nutrients and all of that. I think probably for again like the generic person, like this is probably not going to provide you with the, you know, benefits or like need for gut health, which is another thing that it's promoted for. Um, and certainly it's probably again waste of money for most people, just really like not a necessity in my opinion. But I'm sure there are people that would argue against the other direction. But the supplement industry is one of the largest ones, and it's very comparable to what people say about like big pharma. Yeah,
Hmm.
but it is so easy again to see an individual who looks very fit, promoting a supplement like colostrum, and people reviewing it and saying, oh, like you should take colostrum because you're going to get a healthier gut and skin and a better immune system. It's so easy to see that and say, oh yeah, I need that, or I want that. But in reality probably that one single supplement is likely not going to solve those problems. There's likely, if you're seeing issues with your skin, your gut, and your immune system, a root cause for that. And there are much better ways that we can dive into that from a nutritional perspective without just like band-aid, let's throw colostrum at it.
Hmm. I think that's such a good point too for both fitness and nutrition things, right? Like when it comes to fitness and nutrition, there's never one magical exercise, one magical supplement or food that's going to like heal all of your problems. It's always an individual approach. It's always like a whole body approach. And I think that can be like a helpful thing to remember when you're seeing these things that like we all love quick fixes, right? Like, I'm not gonna lie, if I could get my hands on a quick fix, like, I'm probably going to. And I feel like most people would agree with that. We're all busy. We all have limited time, limited capacity. Like, obviously, that sounds like a dream, but I think it is important to remember that's just not how things work, especially in the fitness and nutrition space. So, keeping that in mind as you're like scrolling and seeing things I think can be helpful. Like, yes, this one, again, talking about colostrum, like, yes, maybe this could fit into my overall nutrition, profile or my supplements, and maybe it will help me, but it's probably not going to be the magic pill
Right.
or, supplement, whatever.
I think it's also just like worth mentioning that like supplements are not like regulated by the FDA. So
Hmm.
it's really important before you start taking something that you do consult with, a provider, a nutritionist, dietitian, your, own, primary care provider, or if you are pregnant, working with your OB or midwife and just checking before you start taking something. I'm differentiating out here from the conversation on colostrum, but I just wanted to, since we are chatting about supplements, make sure that I mentioned that.
Yeah, especially because we are geared towards trying to conceive pregnancy postpartum. So that's definitely a population that you need to be checking with your doctor before you take anything. Okay, so that was kind of like our okay, what are we seeing now? Like what's, going on social media currently? But should we dive into like more specific things that like we generally see?
Yeah, and I think general things, and then also like I think also mentioning too like why all of this like misinformation, overwhelm, and disinformation can be like harmful too. So, but yeah, tell me more about like what you're seeing specifically or what clients are coming to you with.
Yeah. So let's start with pregnancy. We can go in order from like pregnancy to postpartum. So with pregnancy, most of my one-on-one clients are pregnant, and I don't think this is a coincidence. I think it's because there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of fear-mongering around exercise during pregnancy. Some like social media trends that I see are wanting to have a belly-only pregnancy, which I could rant about this forever and ever. But if you see something about a belly only pregnancy, one, like ask yourself why you want a belly only pregnancy. Like your body is going to change in pregnancy. That's, by design. Our bodies have to change and grow in order to grow another human being. And a belly only pregnancy, I think generally is referring to like only gaining weight in the belly, like only having a bump, not gaining weight or like fluid anywhere else. And this is just something that we don't have control over. Like there are general recommendations around how much weight you should gain in pregnancy. And a lot of that is, again, individualized, it's nuanced. Typically, it's based on what your pre pregnancy weight is. So it's going to differ from person to person, but we can't dictate where that extra weight is going to go. And if you see somebody having a belly only pregnancy, remembering that that is genetic. That is their genetics, that is their body type. And I will call myself out here because I pretty much had a belly only pregnancy. And I've had people be like, I want to look like you in pregnancy. And I'm like, don't like I didn't do any like I it was not due to any of the workouts I was doing. It was not due to any of that. That's literally just how my body is. And I know people who were very thin pre-pregnancy and gained like 75 pounds. Like I know one person who she gained 75 pounds in both of her pregnancies, even though she was like a very quote unquote thin and fit person pre-pregnancy. That's just how her body was. That was how her body took on pregnancy. And there was nothing she could do about it. She didn't change the way she worked out or ate or any of that stuff. And so I think it's important to remember like your body's going to do what it's going to do. And comparing yourself to other people that are pregnant or like blaming yourself, I mean, like, oh, I must have been because I ate too much Ben and Jerry's that I didn't get my belly only pregnancy. Like, no, like your body's going to do what it's going to do. And people that are trying to sell you like a workout program or probably even like a nutrition protocol, that's like, oh, you're going to get this result. It's a load of crap. They can't guarantee what your body is going to look like during pregnancy. So in my opinion, if you see something geared, like especially a workout program that's geared towards a belly only pregnancy or trying to be like, this is how much weight you'll gain or, whatever, anything related to that, it's probably a scam. I would run away from that straight up.
Yeah, I've also seen other things in correlation about like losing weight during pregnancy, or people being concerned, specifically if they were to develop like gestational diabetes and feel like they need to lose weight during this time. And it's a time where you need to be focusing on nourishing yourself and not worrying about what the number on the scale says, unless obviously there's some type of health concern between you and your provider regarding what that is. But, in the grand scheme of things, that's probably less from a population standpoint. And I think the fear is more around social media
Hmm.
related things, like you're saying. And it just is, again, like, it's not a time for like extremeness with food or diet. It's a time to really like tune in and listen to what your body needs and focus on, again, nourishing and moving with intention to prepare you for birth.
Exactly. And I even feel like you mentioned gestational diabetes. Like, I feel like I'm sure you've seen this too, even just like like reels or like clickbaity things. It's like, do this to avoid getting gestational diabetes in pregnancy, or like eat this way or do this. Like, have you seen that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there definitely are like condition specific things like that, with diabetes, like, eat this or order this way. And again, there's so much nuance here, and it really is so dependent on the person. And it's probably, the person that is putting out the content is not like doing this to try to, be harmful. But I do think that sometimes this just has such a strong like mental like health impact, or bring like guilt and shame into the picture where it does not need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think a lot of these posts are like they come from a good place, right? Like people want to
Yeah,
help. But it does lead to a lot of questioning, overwhelm, shame, like you said. I'm trying to think of any other like pregnancy related kind of things that I've seen from the fitness space. I mean, there's other like myths and like misinformation in general, which I feel like we've covered in some other episodes, and I'll drop that in the description so people can find those. Any other like nutrition things that you feel like you've seen in terms of pregnancy?
I think those two that I mentioned are big ones. The ones around gestational diabetes, or you like losing weight or not, you know, gaining weight. Otherwise, I think again, it's like generally people trying to like share ideas around things from a positive nature. Um, but again, it can sometimes just come off a little bit like you have to do it this way, or you're failing, and that again is just um doesn't help people feel good about what they're doing. It's sort of like that approach we've sometimes talked about, like you get like a list of foods from your doctor that are like, don't eat this. And it's like, well, then what am I supposed like what can I eat? What am I supposed to eat? And instead of just saying like, like don't eat this, we need to talk about, like why is it not recommended and what are good things to include. Like I personally really love like Lily Nichols real food for pregnancy, and I know my the midwives in my practice recommend it and share it. But like those are great tools and great resources for people, but there can be just there's a lot of noise out there.
The thing with general recommendations too is they're general, right? They're not taking into account your individual circumstances. And I do think, and I feel like I have this conversation with people a lot, I do feel like the general recommendations are not bad. I think they err on the side of caution because when you aren't able to take into account, the individual person and their circumstances, we want to err on the side of caution, especially with pregnancy because you don't want anything bad to happen, right? So, like kind of we talked about before, like it all is like coming from a well-intentioned place, but then I do think it becomes fear-mongering, or then you get people, in the comments that are like, well, I did this and it's some totally like off the cuff like thing. And they're like, and my baby turned out fine or I turned out fine. It's like the equivalent of like our grandparents being like, oh, we didn't have car seats for the baby. We just threw them in there driving home from the hospital. They turned out fine. Like, then you get like the survivor bias and it's like, oh, well, maybe I can do that. And what this is lacking is a conversation with your provider who knows you, your history, your pregnancy, or a conversation with a professional who can take all these things into account and make a more specific, better recommendation for you and your situation.
I think that's a good point. And I'm glad you brought up the comment section because I think that so many people have maybe had some type of poor experience with a provider, whether it was, pregnancy or postpartum related. And so they feel like they lost, that like trust in the medical system because of something that happened to them. They were just dismissed or not heard. And then they turn to posting their question in a Facebook group or something like that. And people are commenting based on their own personal experience, but it doesn't mean like that you should be taking medical advice from a Facebook group chat, or even if it's, less of a medical question, but something else regarding your care. It's just such a big concern. I see that a lot too. And I often hesitate on responding to those kinds of things because even though maybe I have, coming from a good intention type of response, it's like you should be calling, the hospital with this question, not feeling like you need to post it in a Facebook group.
I feel like when we came up with the idea for this episode, we were thinking more about like things you see on like Instagram and TikTok. We didn't even think about Facebook groups and the mom groups and the things that people are posting in
I know when you said comments,
there.
I like that's initially where my brain went because that is like I mean, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. And I definitely feel like I mean, and I understand, wanting to post in a Facebook group or like Reddit, like that's kind of the same, idea, like wanting to get other people's experiences. But I think it can turn from like oh, it's helpful for me to hear from other people who experienced this too and, how it turned out for them. It can turn very quickly from that into taking advice from other people that could have really big consequences.
Yeah.
So, always, yeah, proceed with caution in Facebook groups, on Reddit. When in doubt, call your provider. And I think, especially in pregnancy, too, people, and I don't know, maybe this is like something as like women specifically, I feel like we experience like we don't want to overreact, right? Don't want to show up at labor and delivery and be like, oh, I was doing, my kick counts and my baby was moving a little less. And like they don't want to show up and like be perceived as being like over dramatic, like your baby's fine. What do you mean? And so then people, will, and I mean, this is obviously not fitness or nutrition related, but I just saw something recently about this with the kick counts, just like not wanting to show up and not wanting to be, yeah, perceived as like being anxious or like over dramatic, and instead going to Facebook groups and being like, my baby hasn't kicked as much. What do you think? And people are like, oh, try this, try this. Like, it's probably fine. My baby didn't move that much at the end of pregnancy. Like, they're running out of space. And again, these people are like well intentioned. No one wants anything bad to happen to their baby or someone else's baby, but they don't know you. They don't know your pregnancy. And you always want to be on the safe side. Contact your provider, show up at labor and delivery. Like, obviously, people have bad experiences, like, but that happens with everything, right? Like, go on any Google review or Yelp review. People are always talking about bad experiences. But like in general, I think your midwife, your OB, the nurses, they would rather you show up and everything's fine than you take advice from a Facebook group or a Reddit thread and you show up when it's too late and everything is not fine.
Right. I
So,
don't know a provider that would say something different than that.
yeah, I feel like that was a little side tangent, but I feel like that was needed to add in.
No, I think that's really, again, I think that's really important when we are thinking about navigating like the social media scape because that is so prominent if you're spending any sort of time in a Facebook group, like like we mentioned. So
Yeah. Okay, so that was pregnancy. We can move right along to postpartum. I don't know which is worse, honestly, pregnancy or postpartum on social media. I think when it comes to postpartum, what we see the most of is bounce back culture, right?
yeah, yeah. And I think that that piece is just ends up again, we're talking about like uh, pretty like harmful like consequences with bounce back culture because you're playing the comparison game to someone else's experience like you mentioned before like other people's genetics and that leaves you again feeling like you're not where someone else is and you're failing right
Hmm.
or maybe you're really ignoring your needs to heal as a mom and you're seeing someone else who had a baby you know early, earlier than you later than you I don't know what the time
Yeah, later. I think it
later
would be later, yeah.
later than you maybe like progressing faster but maybe they're not eating because they have PPD. Like you just don't ever know what is going on with someone else. Um, and I think it's just important to know that like you should be following your own like journey and listening to like your body because postpartum is really difficult season and it's you're taking care of a whole nother like human maybe other humans in your house and taking care of yourself can be really challenging so you know don't play that comparison game with someone else you got to put your blinders on.
Right. And I love that you brought up like PPD and the mental health aspect because I do think bounce back culture has, well, I do think it can contribute to
Yeah.
worsening mental health conditions. And I feel like it's tricky, right? Because we know that movement can improve your mood and your mental health. But with bounce back culture, there's a very specific, like expectation of how you should look or how, like the timeline of your weight loss or, whatever it is. And so then that's adding extra pressure when you're already trying to like find your new normal. And so it's like that aspect of it is not helpful for your mental health. And instead, trying to think of movement as something that is, honoring your body, honoring where your body is at, helping you heal, and not like a means to an end or like shrinking your body. I feel like something that really grinds my gears in the postpartum fitness space is okay, I'm just gonna say it, is trainers or like influencers that use their own bodies to market their programs in a way that is like, do my program and look like me. I feel
Yeah.
like this also goes with like the belly only pregnancy thing, but like, I see it so much. I'm sure you've seen it too. And it's like they're like holding up their boobs, and like flexing their abs. And they're like, oh, do this and you'll get, my six-pack abs and no diastasis recti in 6 weeks. And I'm like, no, that's not, again, that's not how it works. And you were probably blessed with genetics that helped you lose the weight, and you probably worked out your entire pregnancy, which is why you still have visible abs, and you probably didn't even have diastasis recti. So,
And I think the way that like you're describing too, it like they're promoting their program or product in a way that insinuates that the customer needs to like fix their body, like fix themselves, like something's broken, right? And it's
hmm
like, no, you're not broken. You don't need to be like fixed. Sure, you may need some like support and help so that you can create some like systems that are supportive for you. But you don't need to be fixed. There's something wrong.
hmm Well, and I do think too, like something specific like diastasis recti, like prolapse and pelvic floor dysfunction, these are very complex diagnoses because it is an actual thing. And I am, friends with a lot of pelvic floor physical therapists, and they have even said like people will come into their office, into their clinic for in-person treatment, and they're like, "Oh, I've been trying this and this and this. I saw this on Instagram. I saw this on TikTok. This person healed their ab separation by doing this, this, and this." And they're like, "You made it worse." I mean, they're not saying that to the person directly, but it's like, oh, all these things that you did actually made your individual specific condition worse. And I do think it's really important to, and like, I don't want to put the responsibility on the consumer, right? Because then you're like, oh, well, now I'm dealing with postpartum and I'm so busy and overwhelmed. And now I have to be the one to filter through all of this stuff and know what's legit. And I think that that can be really hard too. But I think, what's the word? Like being like discerning as you're scrolling through, like paying attention to people's credentials. Like, who are they? What kind of experience do they have? And not just lived experience, but experience working with other people's bodies and actually helping other people. And what is their formal education? Like, all of these things do matter. And I see on TikTok specifically people being like, well, I want to see someone else who has done it. I don't care if they have credentials. If this person lost 50 pounds postpartum and they healed their ab separation, I want to hear from them versus hear from this pelvic floor physical therapist who hasn't had a baby. you know? I've seen that quite a bit. And it's like, you don't necessarily have to go through the process yourself to be knowledgeable and to have the expertise to help other people.
I've seen that too. And I think that that thought process is so interesting, like someone trusting just, again, someone with lived experience, who has done it over, the actual, expert professional, who has probably, maybe if they haven't gone through your specific, thing that you're working on, or that they've had a baby or whatever the case may be. And I don't know, they've worked with hundreds of people with similar like not issues, but like conditions, it's that is mind blowing to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I understand wanting to work with someone or get advice from someone who has experienced the same thing as you, like just to have that like shared experience, more empathy. I mean, I think anyone can have empathy regardless if they went through the experience, but there also are professionals out there that probably have gone through the same experience that you're looking for. You just might have to look a little harder for them. I always, whenever I'm seeing these trends or like seemingly clickbaity things, I'm always that person where I'm like, get me to their website. I want to see their credentials. And a lot of people don't have them. And it's like, I don't know. To me, I feel like when you are working with a very specific population like this, with dealing with conditions that are very complex, there has to be formal education. There has to be experience working with many different bodies, not just your own. That's my two
I,
cents.
No, I agree completely, right? It's like if you were to apply for a job without any of the listed credentials, right? Like, do you really think you're going to be the one that is like hired if you don't have the right credentials for the position? Like, it should be the same thing as the like consumer who's looking to work with with the professional, the expert, right? Like, they should be fitting those qualifications for what you're looking for. And, I wouldn't apply for a job if I didn't have the the right credentials, and I would not look to like work with some type of professional that didn't have the right thing either. So I think that is like really good thing to consider, like when you're kind of like looking to like spot red flags on social media and providers, and just making sure that they really do have the correct qualifications for what you're looking for, that it's not just like a one size fit all type of program or protocol that is
Yeah.
out there.
And I think too, like, don't be afraid to ask. Like, if you are following someone on social media and you really like what they're putting out, you like their content, their transformation, whatever it is, don't be afraid to reach out and be like, I'm interested in working with you, but I want to know your credentials. What's your experience? If someone is qualified to help you, they're not going to have any problem giving you their credentials and their experience. I've been asked that. I'm sure you've been asked that too. I have no problem giving that information to people. And if they don't want to give you that information, I think that's a red flag and something to be
100%.
aware of.
100%. And I think most people that are going to be like, again, like great providers for people happily list their credentials like in their content and on their
Hmm.
website. Like they want you to know, like, I am an expert in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you see in the, sorry, I feel like I really dominated that here.
No, it's
What?
okay. Like I echo the same like sentiments. So
Yeah, like what do you see? I mean, I feel like there's so much. We probably could do a whole another episode just on like postpartum weight loss, but what do you see nutrition specific in the postpartum space that's like
yeah,
problematic?
I think it's, it's similar. It's a lot of, feeling really conflicted between, you're nursing, breastfeeding a lot of moms and needing the nutrition, food, being hungry, but feeling pulled like you have to start dieting and people saying like, oh, I can't wait to be done my breastfeeding journey so that I can lose weight. I think that's probably the biggest like thing I see individuals share, on things like threads or in Facebook groups, probably on, I'm sure, on TikTok and Instagram as well. And it's just, there are, I think, some, again, like great professionals in the space who are like echoing similar message that I do, but it's like, this is such a time to like nourish and heal your body. And I also like very much understanding like wanting to have like your body back in that sense. And I don't think there's anything like wrong with like wanting to feel that way, but I do think it's important to not put the pressure on yourself during this time and really just like shifting the mindset on like, okay, this is the time to take care of my body, give it the nutrients that it needs so that you can really like feel your best and have better energy. And then, you're going to get to a point where you can be like in a calorie deficit and more focused on weight loss if that's what you're, looking for. But it does not need to happen in a 6 week, in a 6 month time frame. Like it's a season to be gentle with yourself.
Yeah. And again, I think that comes back to the bounce back,
Yeah.
societal pressure, because when you really think about it, you've been pregnant for 10 months. We always say 9 months, but it's 10 months. And, that's a lot's been happening in a relatively short amount of time. And you are being depleted, right? Because your baby is taking the nutrients. Like
Yes.
your baby is the priority. And so if you aren't fueling yourself properly, you are the one that suffers, not the
Yeah.
baby. The baby takes what they need.
Yeah.
And so postpartum, you really have to be prioritizing nourishing, or else you're just going to be even more depleted. And like, where does that leave you?
Yeah. I mean, and that's a story from so many moms. Like, you're walking around like a zombie with coffee and cold waffles,
Right.
right? Like, no, like you need to, eat breakfast and eat meals throughout the day that are not your kids' leftovers. And like you matter too. And I know that it's hard, it's not an easy task. Um, but when you are able to show up for yourself and again, it doesn't have to be like perfect, right? But when you put the consistency in, it does make a huge difference in how you're gonna feel.
Yeah, and I think maybe even just shifting the expectation too to like, I mean, you and I are both coming up on 2 years postpartum, and I feel like, we both are like just finally in a space where we're like, we can prioritize our workouts now and actually like, be consistent like month over month, not even just week over week anymore, but like and same with nutrition. I mean, I'm just recently in a place where I'm like, okay, I can really start thinking about like prioritizing my protein and my fiber. Like, like it takes a long time. And if you're struggling in that early postpartum period or like beating yourself up, being like, oh, I'm not working out consistently. My nutrition sucks. Like, I'm not losing weight. What's wrong with me? Remembering that nothing's wrong with you and it takes a lot of time. I'm going through a pregnancy and postpartum corrective exercise certification right now. And even the instructor who is teaching it, who is a pelvic floor physical therapist, she was sharing some of her own experience. And she was like, it took me 5 years to heal my prolapse after having babies. And she's like, these things just take time. Bodies are slow, and we need to shift that narrative to like, it's not going to happen in that first 6 weeks, in that first year. Like, it takes time. And it's important to remember that. And yeah, like you said, just trying to just stay consistent and be patient with yourself. I think it's really important.
Yeah, and I think those are really good like wrap up and takeaway points too that you just mentioned. Regardless of like the stage you're in, just being like kind to yourself and, patient. It doesn't, nothing needs to be like so fast in the like fitness and nutrition space. And like, you don't need to like, again, like bounce back or like measure, your worth in these like minuscule ways. Like, try to, you know, listen to your body, get some like, a good, like credible experts like in your corner if you need support with things. Um, but don't get wrapped into the clickbaity stuff.
And you can always take a social media detox if you need to.
Yeah.
Log off. I feel like even for a lot of people towards the end of pregnancy, like that's a big thing too. Just needing to like log off and get away from all the overwhelm can make a really big difference. So,
Yeah, we want to hear from you guys. Feel free to DM us what, bullshit you've seen on social media lately. We'd love to hear it. And if you are, again, like looking for more support in your space, both Megan and I are on Instagram. Megan is at Vibrant Mama Wellness, and I'm at Wholesome Huntress Nutrition. Please share this if you enjoyed the conversation, and we will be back next week.